Hi everybody, let's talk about level 5 flashcards. There's some things that we haven't talked a lot about, but just a little bit, so you're really going to have to focus in and do a little studying to master the level 5. Let's start. The level 5 idea for chloroplasts is what goes in and what comes out. We've talked about that. The idea that the chloroplast is filled with this pigment called chlorophyll. And then there's this question about why animals would starve and suffocate. An animal would starve because no sugar is produced. Would suffocate because no oxygen is produced without chloroplasts. We've talked about autotrophs and heterotrophs, so that's not anything new. There will be an extra challenge question on this thing called chemosynthesis. It just turns out that archaebacteria don't do photosynthesis. They do some other process altogether. This card is about the central vacuole. So we've learned about the cell wall as a little brick that allows the cell to act like a little brick that makes the plant be able to grow tall. Central to that thing acting like a brick is this structure called the central vacuole, and it's basically a bag full of water. When the bag is full of water, there's a lot of pressure pushing the membrane against the wall, and that allows each cell to basically act like a brick, which allows this plant to grow tall, be made of these really solid bricks. The pressure that this vacuole creates is called Turgor pressure. When it's full, it presses, and pressure is pressing. It's a force, and it basically makes this cell into a brick. The brick lined up can make this thing grow tall. When a plant loses water, the vacuole shrinks, and as a result, the membrane's not pushed against the wall anymore. It makes this cell wall unstable, not allowing the plant to act, or rather the plant cell to act like a brick, and that's when the plant wilts like this. This is a nice diagram of a eukaryotic cell and a prokaryotic cell, and the only new idea here is this idea that inside of a prokaryotic cell, the DNA is not just sort of free as it is in the prokaryotic cell, just sort of a big thread of it. Those threads are wrapped up into spools called chromosomes. For extra challenge, find out what ribosomes, lysosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, and Golgi bodies do. The next piece here is the mitochondrion, and this idea is that mitochondrion take the sugar that the chloroplasts make and they burn it essentially in this structure. And so the glucose goes in. Technically it's broken down glucose, but you don't need to worry about that. And it goes and diffuses into the mitochondrion where it gets chemically or changed into carbon dioxide and water. Only for the extra challenge part, there's this cool molecule called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, and it's a little chemical battery that gets charged by the mitochondria as it releases the energy from the sugar, and it basically goes around as a little battery and powers all the organelles. It's a very cool little molecule. This next diagram is super clear, and it adds the vacuole into one of the differences between a plant and an animal cell. The large central vacuole is a key part of a typical plant cell. So this diagram adds that in, and it is a level 5 idea. On this card is the extra challenge word called lysosome. It's a structure in the cell that's a little vacuole full of digestive enzymes that acts like the trash bin of the cell. Things the cell doesn't need get put in there and they get digested away into little bits. So on this card, it's showing the cytoplasm. And this is where I'm going to ask you questions about the concept of diffusion. And it's this idea that there's a molecular soup of molecules, and that the way the molecules move around inside of a cell is that they are diffusing from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration. And that's the key idea that is a level 5 idea. This card deals with the concept of a semi-permeable membrane, that is, that some things pass through but some things do not. And shown in the diagram that small molecules get through, like the small balls there, and the large balls do not pass through. So that's the idea of a semi-permeable membrane. And the one word you have to add to this card is osmosis, because that's when water diffuses through a semi-permeable membrane. So you need to add the word osmosis. It's level 5. For extra challenge, you'll need to know that diffusion is an example of passive transport, does not require cell energy, and then an example of active transport. And I'll talk about endocytosis and exocytosis. It's a form of transport that requires energy. Endo is a prefix that means in. So when a cell makes a vacuole to bring something into the cell, that's called endocytosis. The prefix exo means exit. And so when a cell makes a vacuole to make something exit the cell, that's called exocytosis. They're both examples of active transport. Anyway, hope that's helpful to you as you look at your level 5 flashcards.